What's up? What's up?
Hey,
Welcome to episode number 2 of Nasty Nate and the Boston Mess. How you doing,
welcome,
Nate?
Jose. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So I'm going to start off by bringing up something that you did not want to touch on, which is the current events going on around our country and our city, and we'll touch on it briefly because I'm not really a political person. I'm not one way or another for either party or things like that, but I am for what's right and wrong. And clearly, what happened last week with the douchebag in Minneapolis, that cop kneeling on that guy's neck and him ultimately end up dead. That was disgusting. It was very difficult to watch, and thankfully they've upgraded the charges and it's being handled, and hopefully things go um, the way they should. Now the country has been in an uproar, and some are behaving stoically and doing amazing things and saying amazing things and doing the protests, and then you have the opportunists who are coming in and committing criminal acts and lighting fires and looting stores. And it's a horrific thing to watch all around, and it's very sad that this is happening, and it's ultimately causing more deaths and more poverty and people losing businesses, and we have to spend more taxpayer resources on cleaning up this mess. It's a sad situation. As I said, I'm not gonna lean one way or another, but I know what's right and wrong, and the looting and that stuff is wrong. That cop is a son of a bitch, and he's wrong, and so are his little co-conspirators, and hopefully they're all gonna get what's coming to them.
There, I don't know if you saw the news this morning. One of the attorneys for one of the cops, I don't remember which one, they had like an arraignment, I think, early this morning, and one of the attorneys is already making it clear that that cop is going to turn on the main cop, Derek.
He's gonna turn on who?
The cop that had the knee on the neck, Derek.
He's gonna get turned on, or he's gonna
One of the other cops that was one of the three, right, that we were charged, is the lawyer was basically saying, look, my client, this police officer, was a rookie on the force.
Right.
And this guy was a 19-year veteran who he was scared of.
Yeah.
Right. And he was known to be a bully. He was, so that was kind of, I mean, I do believe that the other three police officers should have been charged, and I'm glad that they have been.
Yeah.
But I also think that when these lawyers do this, they're very smart when they bring charges, because they can get people to help their case on the case they really want to get the conviction on.
Right.
That's the other part of this, right? Is thank God these guys were charged.
Yeah.
Now the really difficult part is the conviction, right? Historically speaking.
Right.
Even historically speaking, it was a big deal they were charged, hence why there was a wait on this. And typically these cases, right, there's a very long process, and oftentimes people aren't charged. So it was step one, they're charged, which is needed to be done.
Yeah.
Step two, whenever that happens, a year from now, these things take time. Hopefully there's a conviction there. My guess, if I had to guess, is the other three cops are going to turn for a plea bargain to really put the nail in the coffin for the main police officer, Derek, that is on George Floyd's neck.
Well, they can turn all they want. That doesn't dismiss or excuse their oath that they took to serve and protect, which is to protect someone who's being murdered, whether it be by a civilian or an officer. Yep. And they witnessed it and didn't do a damn thing. So even though they'll probably be charged with a lesser crime and probably should be, but they should definitely get something.
Yeah.
It can't be a slap on the wrist. It can't be a fine, or it's going to be a slap in the face of the civilians, of George Floyd and his family, and you know, everyone that's happened to. It's got a change has to be made. This is the perfect time, perfect example where it was in everyone's face, everyone saw it, and there's really no explaining it away. Anyway, we wanted to touch on that. I wanted to touch on that. I made you do it because I know you didn't want to.
Well, what I will say, obviously it's, the country's been very divided and feels very divided right now. I think a lot of people just on Tuesday, this past week, Blackout Tuesday, saw a lot of division, right? Of whatever side people were on. There was a lot of really nasty comments going around on social media on Tuesday, right? For people that had their stand. But to find the positive in this, is as long as I can remember these issues going on, and I'm not that old, say since the Rodney King era when I was a kid, something feels different about this, right? And the one thing hopefully comes out of the George Floyd video, as horrific as it is, and I think whatever your politics are as you started out, you have to agree that that was horrific and that can't happen, right? And start, you and I talk all the time when we work out, and we have very different views on some stuff, right? But I think what we do well is we start with our common ground, right? It is, I'm never out to prove you wrong. You're not out to prove me wrong. We both start with our own opinions, and sometimes they're very different. But because I know you're a good person, and I think I'm a good person, you start with what's the common ground here so that we can inch each other our way. All you can ask for is that I hear you and understand your point of view, because you're coming from a different background, a different place than I am. And same on my end, right? Yeah. And so I do think something about this feels different, in that when this happened, people of any political background came out and was like, whoa, this can't happen, right? And certainly one side, one group said, this is what we've been telling you, this has been happening all along. But even if people are late to the party, I think it's important that they're here now and seeing something and saying, hey, we can't allow bad cops like this for this to even happen in the first place. And second, for them to get away with it, right? I think that's like a common thing anybody can agree on there. And then I think you both have a seat at the table and say, so what can we do, right? It's one thing to have outrage about, and the tough part about this is there's a lot of emotions based on people's upbringings, what our parents taught us, what our the people we follow on social media are telling us, what our politics are. But I think it's important to have blinders on for one topic, and whatever the whataboutisms, what about this, what about that? It's like that can take a number, and we can get to that thing right after we talk about this one thing, right? Because it's too easy to talk in circles,
right,
and get nowhere and just leave angry. Right. And and that's the thing. When you and I talked the other day, we started off very differently, but we found some common ground. I learned some things from your point of view, and hopefully you learned from mine. But it wasn't a leave there of like, Jose's an asshole, and I
I thought you were an asshole.
Well, yeah. And so that's my hope, is that we can find common ground wherever we're coming from.
Yeah.
That what happened was wrong and can't be allowed to happen, and take a seat at the table and see what changes we can make to stop that going forward.
Right.
Well, right, because the change has to happen after the outrage and the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the one good thing is, you said something good came out of it, is the dialogue. The fact that we're talking about it, everyone's talking about it, it has brought attention and conversation that's not going away anytime soon. So that's a good thing. Hopefully something good comes from this, and people are better protected. So that's that. Let's move on to some other things. A good way to move on is this shirt from my buddy Eric Yamashita, Hawaii trainer, every day better. I think that's something we should all focus on, just getting every day better. So that's
Absolutely.
a good transition into the next topic. What are some of the questions you had?
So one, you may or may not want to address this, but a lot of questions that we got are, what's going on with the gym, Jose?
The gym. All right, let's get into it. So I'll give a quick synopsis. I had a partner. He came to me. I trained him a few times. I'm not going to say any names or and he said, "What do you want to do when you retire?" And I said, "I want to open my own place." And that's been my lifelong dream, was to open my own place. I've been working in gyms now for almost 30 years, making the gyms money, and I know what people want, and I want to do it myself. And he's like, "Yeah, me too. And I'll fund it. I got all." I'm like, "Yeah, right, whatever." But then a week later, he comes in with a contract, a franchise agreement for Metroflex. I'm like, "Wow, this guy means business." So, long story short, he said he had the money to do it. Now, if I had the money to do it, I wouldn't need him. I wouldn't need anyone. I'd do it myself. So we start looking at buildings. We find a building. It comes time to sign the lease, and immediately he asked me for money. He said, "Well, there's a deposit on the building." I'm like, "Okay, well, you're the money guy." I was going to be in charge of the training, hiring, everyday operations, promotion, and he was going to take care of the construction. Well, long story short, it didn't get done. There was no money, but it was too late. We already signed the lease. So now I'm left trying to find another partner to move forward with. I got a few people that are interested. Then we get hit with the COVID. So we got a partially built gym in a building that we can't be in anymore, and we get hit by the COVID. So the chances of this moving forward, particularly under the name and franchise that it was, are very unlikely, just for legal reasons. I don't want any part of whatever it was that he had to do with. I caught him in lie after lie after lie, and it was too late. I was already on the lease of the building. So basically, I got a little bit of a legal battle ahead of me. Hopefully not, but it's a distinct possibility that I do. And that's it. So that was basically because I trusted this guy. And I mean, there's a lot more to the story, but this is about as much as I should discuss. But always be careful who you're dealing with. When you are dealing with a business, do a background check. Do a deep, extensive background check to find out if this person has done things like this in the past. So, I have a good relationship with the landlord of the building. They're willing to work with me. They too are very disappointed that they didn't do an adequate background check of this individual. And, it's a sad, sad state of affairs. There are just some bad people out there that are willing to lie, steal, cheat to try to get somewhere. And that's not where I come from. I come from you work hard to get to where you're at, and you don't lie and steal and cheat your way into making a living. Like it just didn't make sense. That's why I trusted him. But moving forward, there's a good, possibility. I have some other interested parties that are willing to move forward once we have a little more clarity as to what gyms are going to be allowed to do.
Yeah, you and I talked about it, as much of a mess as that was last year, because the whole thing was built upon your reputation, right? Anyone who knows you, you really have no enemies in this business, because
you didn't know that guy.
Right. You treat people right. You're a handshake deal kind of guy, right? Yeah. Like if you say you're going to be somewhere and do something, you do it. And if you say something's going to be great, it's going to be great, right? You're if anything, you undersell yourself, right? Or under promote yourself, right?
Right.
I give you shit about your lack of posting on social media and stuff. You're not a big self promoter, right? But anyone knows if you're coming to the table with something and you're showing up, you're going to show up at 100%, right? In anything that you do. So that's the shame in this. But again, if there is a positive side, man, I'm glad you guys didn't open up and say November, December, January, right? We talked about my background in the last show of opening up gyms, and I've probably opened up from scratch, like from the ground up, building a gym, empty space, a good 45 gyms, from building them and everything to do with it. And man, is it an uphill battle, with just trying to get out of the red and trying to get whatever base of members you need to pay your bills. And, on one blessing, at least of this is, had you opened up in January, I don't know many people that would have been able to open up in January and survive this, with being shut down. No, because, you don't have your free rent at that point, of starting a business. Yeah. And if the landlord's not willing to work with you, the rents on these big box gyms are just monumental.
Right.
There's if you're not getting a break of just a pause on rent, you're buried. To what are we in now, going on our third month of things being shut down in Massachusetts.
Well, it was officially shut down March 16th,
right?
Everything was shut down.
Yep.
So March, April, almost three months.
Yeah, so that's one blessing, right? And my hope for you is people will get back to the gym, but we may be short a few gym brands when sure. Given everything I just explained of the rents, the overhead on these things.
Well, we already know a bunch in Boston area in general. The Gold's gyms, they're all gone.
Yeah.
The Boston sports clubs,
they're in trouble. Yeah. Well, they had the whole issue where Attorney General had to step in. Right. They were intentionally charging people while they were closed and not giving you any way to cancel, right? There was literally zero ways to cancel. You were just stuck.
They wouldn't even answer, right?
No, they would have a phone number. Nobody answered. If you sent an email, you never got a response. And it was a very intentional move by the company. Probably it has to be out of desperation, right? Why else would you wreck your brand? And every state that they're in, Town Sports International is the parent company, TSI. There's New York Sports Club, Washington Sports Club, Philly Sports Club. Every state did the same thing. And in all of them, the attorney generals got involved. There's class action lawsuits. And the apology that came from the CEO afterwards made it clear it wasn't a whoopsie, we forgot to hit the pause billing button, our bad. It made it clear that they're in some financial trouble. Right. And they have a massive loan due the end of this year. That was like a long-term loan, several years, right? That's finally coming due. And they're going to be in trouble. It would have been tough for them.
That, like 900 million or something stupid?
700 million, something crazy. Yeah, it was some astronomical number that, was silly. And they're a publicly traded company, so you see the information of how much cash they have on hand.
Yeah.
And you know, unless everybody quit every gym out there and joined their gym, there was no way they were going to make up the difference. There's lots of stuff you can do, right? You can ask for different terms, you can give up some equity. There's ways that they could have gotten out of that other than the due date. People get creative, but point of the whole thing is, my hope is, you had a great concept. I do see a resurgence of gyms that are great gyms for people that understand what a great gym is. You've got the new Redcon gym. You've got these kind of one-offs that are popping up, that are just the best equipment. It's a really niche market, right? Like it's a certain person that's asking, do you have a donkey calf raise machine, and what brand is your hack squat, right? But there's people out there, at least, that want a more serious place to train, right? They might not be bodybuilders, but I'm the type of person, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to research and say, what's the best? Where's the best place to do this, right? And so
you're willing to drive 40 minutes to get there.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think the landscape will change, but there will still be the people that will want to work out. There will just be less places to go. So the ones that can make it through, or the ones that might open up after this, once we know what that's going to look like, obviously for people in other states or other countries, in Massachusetts, where we are now, things are still shut down. Right. They just opened up hair salons. What else? Maybe partial office building. I think a small percentage of office buildings might be able to allow some people back in. Yeah. Our restaurants are still closed, only for takeout. Right. I think coming up sometime soon, they'll allow like nail salons, things like that. But we're still heavily closed, and all we know now are rumors of what it could be, right? What is it going to be? Is there going to be a capacity per hour for gyms? We don't know. And is it so hard to plan when things are going to change every day on you?
I think you're going to have to make appointments, and then you can only, you have a 90-minute limit. It's by appointment only, and there can only be 15 people in the gym at a time, depending on the size of the gym or the square footage, unless you have outdoor areas. It's going to be a nightmare, a logistical nightmare, because how are you going to take to control that, like to monitor it, to and
you literally would need like a club, bouncer door guy, right, with a little clicker saying how many people do we have into a head count. Yeah,
you're gonna have to have the least amount of employees with the most amount of people in there.
Yeah,
and who knows, but hopefully things change around. Let's move forward, move on to the next topic before we eat up too much time.
Yeah.
You and I can shit talk forever.
All right. So here's another one. I know you got lots of good stories and people want to hear them. That was some of the feedback from the last podcast, is keep these stories going, stuff we've never heard before.
Yeah.
And some of the questions we got were people from various countries that said, Jose, are you coming back to my country? Are you coming back to Poland? Are you coming back to wherever, right?
Yeah.
I know you've probably got some really crazy stories of being in countries, right, really out of your element. Yeah. You were telling me one the other day, or I think it was you and Telow from back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us one of these crazy stories?
Yeah. So we went to Budapest, Hungary in 1999, and it was still like significantly like mob run, like Russian mob, and it was really, really eye-opener for us. Now it was over 20 years ago, and things were different. It was really cool. We went with the promoter flew us over. He ran the Super Body. He was also the owner of SciTech Nutrition at the time, who was sponsoring my brother Tito. His name was Jolt. Jolt was a great guy. And he showed us a great time. So we're out to dinner one night, and this guy who was a friend of their whole crew. There had to be at least a dozen of us. We're sitting at a long table in a restaurant, and the guy keeps egging me and my brother on, like, you can't do this. How much can you bench? How many reps? This. He was betting us that we couldn't bench 185 for 10 reps and then squat it for 10 reps and then bench it for 9 and squat it for 9 and then all the way down to 1. And we're both looking at each other like, this guy's a clown. Like, yeah, we could do it, but we'll do it with 225. How's that? And the guy was just an antagonizing wise guy. Well, earlier in the night, Jolt and a couple of his buddies were telling us a story about how this like mobster, they were on a cruise and he, a guy owed him money and he beat the hell out of the guy on the cruise. And then he like forcibly raped the guy in front of everyone. And that was like a Russian thing, a way to really humiliate someone. And we're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And so later, fast forward, we're at dinner at this restaurant. The guy's running his mouth. And no sooner does this gigantic guy walk in. He's probably 6'6". He had 2 girls with him. And he was probably a 300-pound guy, like your prototypical Russian monster in a movie. And this guy with the mouth ends up getting up and running out the back of the restaurant. And we're all looking around like, what just happened? And the guy, Jolt, is like, oh, that was the guy I was telling you about, Like, no way. And he's like, yeah. So we all leave. We get in the car. And he's like, back up. We want to see if he put him in the bushes. Like this was dead serious. And it was nothing to them. They're like, he may have stabbed him and threw him in the bushes. And we're like, no. Take us to our hotel. He's like, don't worry. We have a gun. Don't worry. And the guy backed up. They're looking in the bushes. Me and my brother are like hitting the seat. Like, no. Take us home. Take us to our hotel. But it was something you would see in a movie. But it was real, and it happened right in front of me. I mean, this guy, I could go into more detail, but it'll probably get demonetized the second the stuff comes out. I'm trying to do it in the nicest way possible without too much cussing. But yeah, that was
that a typical thing? So when you go to these other countries, right? I think people that aren't well traveled, you take for granted, how safe we generally are, right?
Right.
In this country, just different places. I didn't go, but years and years ago, a guy that that was opening up Planet Fitnesses all around town, was helping a friend open up like a copycat Planet Fitness model in El Salvador. And so he was going to give him all the tools to, this is how you run this $10 model where everybody in town signs up and nobody goes and you make a ton of money. So he took his crew, like a ground crew of, this is my team that helped build my clubs around this area. I'll send them out to you and they'll help you get this going. Right. Yeah. And luckily, I was the personal training guy. He wasn't really worried about personal training off the bat. It's like, once we're open, we'll figure that out. But let's get this first. El Salvador was very, very poor. So I don't even know if personal training is going to work. So I was bummed at first because I know nothing about El Salvador. And I'm like, man, I'm missing out on the free vacation,
Oh, yeah.
And then these guys get back and they're telling me about the experience of, they were picked up in like a military vehicle, but it was private security.
Yeah.
And everyone, there's like 4 or 5 guards, all with automatic weapons. And at numerous points when they're driving, they were getting shot at. Right. And this guy that was opening up these gyms came from like old family money. Like the family owned a coffee bean company. Right. So it was one of those like, in a lot of those countries you probably experienced, there's the extremely rich and the extremely poor.
Yeah.
And so he was in the very, very rich side, and they were getting shot at. They would have to make stops, and they were told, this is how you act. You got to, if anything happens, you run here. We'll give you a gun if you need it. Like, they're just out here to do consulting work. Right. And it's like right out of a movie. Did you have more experiences with that, or generally were your international trips fairly safe?
For the most part, they were safe. there was one where that I was oblivious to it, but I was flown down to Trinidad to guest pose, and I was flown down first class, and I get the person who picks me up is armed, has a bulletproof vest on, and I'm like, what? And then I started asking questions, and they're like, oh, well, the guy who flew me down and promoted the show was really, really wealthy. He owned like all the malls down in Trinidad, and like big fu money. And they said, well, if they know that you're here, if anyone knows you're here with Mr. Hadid, they'll kidnap you and hold you ransom. And I'm like, oh, great. So I had no idea when I was getting into until I was already there. And then when I had a booth set up at the show, and the guy would point out guys in the crowd, he'd like, see that guy, see that guy. He had a whole crew of guys that were there just for security. You know, it was pretty wild because Trinidad is only, I think it's like 10 or 15 miles from Caracas, Venezuela.
Right.
And you know, they have some literal pirates in that area that will, you know, that's what they do, kidnap people. And so that was pretty interesting. You know, I toured Mexico for like 10 days. We were in some pretty seedy areas, but nothing. I'm always pretty oblivious to it because I grew up in, you know, a really nice area, and I didn't, you know, El Salvador, isn't El Salvador the MS-13
Yeah.
gangs? And
Yes, so that's what it was. It was private security going against that, right? And
right.
So once these guys knew nothing too, right? It's just gym guys. Like it's a vacation. I get to go you know, someplace I've never been. And the second they got down there, it was like, you know, they might as well have just been dropped in the middle of Afghanistan. You know, like you get to be a soldier for a day. Here's your vest. Here's your gun. You know, here are the maneuvers we might have to do. Yeah. And just to get to the gym, they had to worry about this stuff. So we heard stories too. I don't know how much you talked to our good friend Jesus.
Yeah.
But what they experienced in Venezuela, right?
Yeah.
And I've over the last 10 years, I've trained a lot of international college kids, a lot of them from Dominican Republic. For whatever reason, Dominican Republic kids come to Boston. They all have my number. And they're all very, very wealthy. The parents do very well. Sometimes it's generational wealth. Sometimes dad is the CEO of a bank or something. Yeah. But their maneuvers for getting around, they have a driver. They have, you know, the driver is usually armed because they're the kids of wealthy people, right? For that very reason of they're a target for kidnapping.
Oh yeah.
It's a real easy way to make money down. I mean, not easy way, but you know, when you're desperate.
Very common way.
Yes, very common way. Exactly. Yeah. You see that in Mexico all the time as well, right? Some of these countries where I don't know if it's the drug cartels. I don't know enough about it, you know, who it might be. But it does tend to be or seem to be organized in an extent, right? It's a business a lot of these guys are running.
Yeah. With desperation, you know, I wouldn't go hanging out there looking for it, you know. Another quick story about when I was in Budapest, I just remembered this, just to give you an idea of what it was like. We were at the show. After the show let out, we were hanging out in the parking lot, just hanging out, having a couple beers or whatever. They had hashish. They were smoking hashish. And there was this one guy on a motorcycle. He was like a, you know, European renowned, like motocross kind of guy or whatever. He was really well known, and he's riding wheelies in the parking lot. And then a girl that we were with then, her name was Corey Nadine. She was a fitness model in all the muscle mags back in the day. She gets on the bike with him. He's popping wheelies with her on the handlebars, and it was crazy. So the cops show up, and the head guy that was with us, obviously I don't speak Hungarian. The cop gets out in this tiny little Yugo of a car. He gets out in his cop uniform and tells us, to disperse, like, and stop riding the motorcycle around. One of the guys gets in the cop's face and is like, basically, get your candy ass out of here. Basically told him to screw and get out of here. And the guy's like, okay, backs up, gets in his car and screws. Like, I'm like, what is this? Like, I didn't even want to ask questions at that point. Like, who are we with? But it was pretty cool. If that was in the States, God knows what would happen.
I've trained, I've heard stories like that from the Saudi or like Abu Dhabi, Dubai clients I've had, right? These are kids that are come from so much money. Right. Their dad has an important position in the government, and they're kids, but they're punks. Like, I give these kids shit all the time. So I'd give them a hard time, but these are kids that are just so entitled and have never experienced any hardships, right? They have so much money. They can pay people to do everything. They can buy their way out of a situation. So these kids were telling me stories of a kid had thrown a party in the apartment building I was living in, and the cops came. And he was explaining to me at first, he's like, your cops here don't work like our cops. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, my country, based on who my dad is, and who my family is and the money that we have, cops generally know not to mess with us. They know that our family name. Yeah. So they know it's bad news if they pull us over or stop us for anything. Yeah. But every once in a while you get a new cop who doesn't know, or somebody that wants to test it, and they pull us over, and as they're trying to be a tough guy cop, I'm taking down their information, and the next day they're out of a job. That level. And it's like, that doesn't work like that here. No. It's maybe, somebody in government. Yeah, right. But probably not to that level. Right. I would hear that from these 18, 19-year-old kids. You imagine the chip they have on their shoulder. Yeah. Before they come to this country thinking, do you know who my dad is? But that's not going to go very far in Boston. Right. All right, let's get to the next one. More bodybuilding related. How do you think Flex will do in the open? And the second part of this is, why don't more 212 guys bump up to the open? I know you have, but let's start with the Flex part, because that's on everyone's mind as we get to coming up to this Olympia.
How will Flex do in the open? Flex is going to dominate. He's listen, it's a hard thing to wrap your head around, and because we're so used to being drilled into our heads that bigger is better, but no, better is better. And Flex is short, but he's not smaller, he's just shorter. And I've gone over this many times, many interviews before. Same thing with Hadi Chupin. Hadi's shorter, he's not smaller, he just weighs less and stands shorter. Flex is the same way, and Hadi was third this year? Third, and you could make an argument of him winning easily. I would have been happy if he won, and I think that's going to be the same thing with Flex Lewis. I think the new version of him getting to train for almost 2 years straight, and with the goal of coming in bigger and not restricting himself for that period of time, the amount of growth, and combined with his aesthetics, his condition, and his ability to present himself. If Phil's not there at his best, if Sean's not there at his best, Flex can not easily, but I can easily see him winning for sure. And if he doesn't win, he's going to be dead center. He's going to be first call out. They're going to put him right up there.
Sure, easily top 5.
Exciting thing. Bodybuilding is a business. They want to sell it. You want to see the best lightweight bodybuilder of all time against the best of the best big guys. So they're going to throw him right into the fire, and I think he can win for sure. You know, as far as why more don't, because again, like what I said, it's drilled into your head that the bigger guy is always going to be better. Well, if you have certain qualities that are better than all the big guys, why wouldn't you be able to beat them? And you know, I just think it was drilled in. Know your role, stay in your lane, do this, you know. And I just happened to do it a few times out of chance. It wasn't like this well thought out thing where I want to do an open show because I want to prove myself. You know, of course I wanted to do that, but each time I did an open show, it was more of a reason behind it. So in 2014, I won the Phoenix 212. 2014. And then in 2015, me and Dusty had been together. We were great friends. We were I-Force partners. And that was going to be his first pro show, his pro debut. And I had told him, I'm going to do it with you. You know, your pro debut, I'll do it with you. So I did. I flew to Phoenix and stayed with Dusty, and we did that show together, and it was awesome. And I ended up doing very well. I placed second. And again, it was one of those, you could argue me winning that one. And then the second open show I did was the Ferrigno, which my wife wanted to do. So I said, yeah, I'll continue dieting. It was later in the year, and it'll be fun, family, friends, you know, my mother-in-law, my grandmother-in-law, my brother, his wife and kids drove down from LA. It was out in Palm Springs. So we had family there, you know, we had Mike Ergis there, Todd came, Jake came. It was just a big family fun weekend. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that show with you. And yeah, and I end up placing fourth there in a really good lineup.
So in that, who placed ahead of you and who was placed behind you, so we get a sense of what that lineup was?
So who won was Brandon Curry won. Cedric was second, and Josh Wade was third, and I was fourth. And then behind me, I mean, there were some good guys, but I don't remember the whole lineup. You know, I'll probably catch a lot of shit for that. Oh yeah, I'm sure there was a lot. Actually, there was only four guys.
Four guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Manuel Romero was fifth. He's like 6 feet tall, 275. I beat him. Who else? Ronaldo Gary from Canada with 6. Who else? Yeah, this is good. She's good. Brad Rowe, my boy Brad Rowe. We love Brad Rowe. I end up beating Brad and his big ass. Yeah, he and I was standing backstage, like you know how they have you line up kind of in a half circle while they're doing call outs. Me and Brad were like chilling, talking the whole time. Like, can you believe this? This is cool. It was a good memory, you know, that we were both New England guys out in Palm Springs and competing on a pro stage, and just enjoying, soaking it all up while we were doing it. But yeah, answer, Flex Lewis and do awesome.
Do you worry about the 212 division? Obviously, that, you know, it was shockwaves when the Arnold dropped it, right? That was a really big deal because it's the second biggest show out there. And you started hearing doom and gloom, right? That's going to be it for the 212. You know, meanwhile, there's just amazing lineups at the shows that have it. Olympia, obviously, has been great. New York Pro is a great lineup. What do you envision happening to the 212? Do you think it's going to continue to thrive, or do you think at some point, with some of these guys moving up, you know, William Bonnick, Hadi, now Flex, showing that the best of the 212 are very capable of hanging with the best of the open, do you think that's a reason to do away with the 212?
No, I don't think it's a reason to do away with the 212. I think it's something to strive for the 212 guys. I think Derek Lunsford at 100% could go in and win many open shows for sure. Um, he has the structure, the size, and we've yet to even tap into what he's,
Sure.
his potential is.
If he can ever show up like those Instagram gym photos,
Yeah,
it's
forget
out.
it.
Yeah.
Forget it. He's going to be awesome. I don't think that they should do away with the 212. I think more of the top 212 guys need to compete more often. Make it a fun thing. You can't win every show. Do it to travel. Do it to meet the fans. Do it to develop your brand, your name. Get out and do 5 or 6 shows a year. If there's a couple shows that are back to back, do them all. I was talking to Ron Harris yesterday. Like, what's his name? Hunter Labrada's doing Tampa, and he said, "Well, I don't know if he's going to do New York. I'd like to see him do New York. Maybe if he doesn't win Tampa, he should do New York." I'm like, do them both regardless. If you win, go win 2 shows in a row.
Yeah.
So,
why do you think that, you've been around a long time, and do you find now, or when was it that it happened that guys switched from, I'm just going to do a ton of shows, right? The Kevin Levrone era,
yeah.
Dexter, right? These people that just show after show after show and just have these crazy resumes, to now this era, which is, I'm going to do as few shows as possible just to make it to the Olympia. And then once you get to the Olympia, like the position you were at for 10 years of getting in the top 5 where you don't have to qualify, and these guys just now sit out. Do you think it's a good idea that they're essentially putting all their eggs in one basket, hoping to just move up in the Olympia?
No, it's not a good idea at all, because, I've used this analogy many times. You don't get better at doing something by not doing it. If your goal is to be a better bodybuilder, then you need to bodybuild. If your goal is to peak better for shows, then you need to do it more often to figure out, all the nuances of doing it, and figure out what mistakes you made by doing it more and more and more.
Can you think of, when did that start happening? Is there a time period you can think of that it shifted and all of the guys just started sitting out the whole year just for the Olympia, or maybe just the Arnold?
Well, I think when after Ronnie won the Olympia, I think he had won the Arnold that same year, maybe 2000, 2001. And 2001, he won the Arnold, and then he almost got beat by Jay.
Yeah.
So I think he stopped doing both right after that show in 2001, because Jay almost took him out, and he's like, "No, man, I need a whole year to recover." Plus, Mr. Olympia is making plenty of money between his contest winning, prize money, endorsements, contracts, guest appearance fees. He doesn't financially need to compete year round. And then it became a trendy thing, but there's guys out there that Dexter kept continuing to compete in. But once you get a taste of what it could be like to be Mr. Olympia, some of the guys started sitting out. Like, you were nipping on Jay's heels. Maybe if I take that year off, I can beat him. I never looked at it like that. I didn't think I needed a year, because I was pretty close to the weight limit. I wasn't going to put on 3 or 4 or 5 pounds and be better. My physique wasn't going to benefit by doing that. So I didn't need to take a year off to get bigger. I needed to compete as many times as possible to grow my name, grow my fan base, and be seen by as many people as possible. So I think, once Ronnie did it, and then Jay did it, Phil did it. Phil and Flex did it. Once they won, Flex did the first Arnold Classic 212, and then that was it. That was the only show he did before the Olympia for every year. But as far as contenders, like Clarita, I only bring his name up because I know that he's taken years off. Last year, he took the entire year off. He did come back better, but was it worth it?
Nobody's talking about him all year until right after that show, right? He gets a little bit of a bump, and then nobody's talking about him again.
Right. Where he could have won 2 or 3 shows in that period of time. He could have been seen in front of more promoters and, that want to fly him somewhere to guest pose. A lot more fans could have had an opportunity to see him, more opportunities to do seminars and things like that. Now, if he continues growing like that, that brings more excitement to the class. Now you got Clarita against Lunsford, against Kamal. This is exciting. That's how you build it.
All the little battles, right? It's like back in the day when you had Kamali and Titus, right? Neither of those guys were going to be Mr. Olympia, but the little battles, it brought excitement to it. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that would be a way to create more excitement, is to build each character. Each character has to have, some excitement to them. So then you see it coming, and you can promote the show. As of right now, you have Kamal, who lives in, he's in England, but I think he's trying to boost his social media a little bit more now. Against, who was second last year? Lunsford, yeah. And then
Clarita third.
And then Clarita, and then John Jewett. I know the pandemic has really knocked everyone off, so social media is not going to be as good as it could be. But they need to get out there. I would like to see Clarita do New York and win. Did he win last year? Yeah, I think so.
No, we were at last year was
Eduardo?
No, Eduardo should have won.
It was Ashkenani.
Yeah, that was the one. For me personally, I don't know that I've ever been to a show that I disagreed more. Usually, I agree with, like, well, you're splitting hairs, right? It's like, say in the Olympia, I might have had Clarita ahead of Derek, right? Yeah. Just on the qualities, he was just peeled, absolutely peeled, right? And Derek was a little watery. Yeah. But yeah, that show was bizarre.
Yeah.
Ashkenani being off by anybody's standard, right? Like almost guest posing. And Eduardo just being peeled as he always is, right? Yeah. Lights out, so on the money. And I think there were probably boos in the crowd when that happened. Like, I think the consensus was something was off on that.
Yeah. Well, that happens. If you compete long enough, you're gonna see everything. And that was upsetting to see. I had Eduardo a clear-cut winner. But yeah, my point is, I'd love to see Clarita go do New York, win New York, win another one, win Tampa, and then go try to win the Olympia. Win them all.
How many shows a year did you do on average?
I averaged 5 a year, every year. Only 1 year, 2011, did I take time off. I don't know why that was. Did I even compete after that? I did the New York Pro and the Olympia, and that was it. But every other year I did 5. See, I beat Flex that year in New York, and then it didn't help me win the Olympia by not competing again. I should have went and did a bunch of other shows. I wanted to do Toronto, and didn't happen. I asked Steve Weinberger. I was doing a photo shoot at his gym on Sunday, and I said, should I go to Toronto? He's like, for what? And I'm like, do the Open, And he was like, no. He's like, you're not gonna beat any of those guys, and that's the thing that's drilled into your head. That's why, back then, and I was right at 200 pounds. I wasn't 210, which is a very different look on a short guy. But he was being honest with me, and he happened to be judging in Toronto. So once the head judge tells you don't bother,
Right.
I didn't bother to go.
Right.
But yeah, I did tons of, how many shows? 10 years average. I did close to 50 shows, 50 pro shows.
Crazy.
Yeah. And that's how I built my fan base, was being everywhere, going all over the world and meeting people, and then getting appearances from that. Every show you'd meet someone. Hey, I'm a promoter here. They get my number. We stay in contact, and you end up doing appearances. So I think that's the best way to do it. And I just love the sport of it. Someone who's like, I'm going to do 4 shows in a row, and I'm not afraid, and I'm going to whoop your ass on every one of them. To me, that's a baller. If someone goes out and says, listen, I'm going to do all these shows to limit the amount of people that come to the Olympia, more money for me, So I think it'd be awesome just to see someone do that.
That's an interesting thing, right? It gets brought up once somebody wins a show and gets a qualification. I've seen it talked about on social media that when they continue to do shows and maybe win, it's like that they should bow out, right?
No.
You already got your qualification. I'm on your side. I don't agree with that at all. But people talk about that, right? Like, you should give someone else a chance to qualify. It's like, no.
It's a business.
I'd love to see Phil, Heath, and whoever dominate the whole year.
Right. And if I do 4 shows in a row and you can't beat me, you're not going to beat me at the Olympia.
Right.
So
right.
I don't really care about that. I care about feeding my family and winning and doing well and limiting the opportunity of you coming into the Olympia and trying to beat me.
No, do you think there's something the league as a whole, as in IFBB, that's allowing these shows to be sanctioned, could do schedule wise to, I'm sure the league wants people to compete more, right? They want these 212 guys to compete. They want the open guys to compete because it just brings more fans out, right? And it just makes everything better.
Yeah.
Don't you think there's something they could do in terms of scheduling? Like, you always did the Olympia and then you did a bunch of shows right after, right? And it seems
Korea was always the week after the Olympia.
Yeah. So don't you think it would make sense, and maybe this is already there and I just don't know the schedule, to have some type of block of, I know there's the season, right? It kicks off with the Arnold and you get a bunch of shows after, but that stuff drags out for months and months and months, right? And people aren't going to be in contest mode for that long, and be in good health. And then you have the leading up to the Olympia, the last shows to qualify, right? And the shows after. Do you think if they grouped it a little smarter of, here's a 12-week stretch where there's a show every weekend, right? Around the Arnold, and a 12-week stretch around the Olympia, that it would be better for the sport in terms of making it easier for guys to compete?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because right now they're just spaced out all year. Like, as a fan, I like it. Once the season gets going, there is a show every other weekend or whatever it works out to be. But the coverage is so shit across media, right? Like, it's if somebody happens to be there, nowadays we're like looking on people's Instagram lives and it's shitty cell phone video streaming and terrible quality. We're almost just kind of waiting for pictures anyway, right? It's not like you have a quality streaming service that is like, I'm a UFC fan, right? So I know when there's a fight, right? There's a pay-per-view coming up this Saturday. It's blocked off. That's what I'm doing Saturday night. Going to order the pay-per-view. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it would make sense to kind of block these things so that if you're a competitor, you know, not everybody can make it to the Arnold, but maybe right after the Arnold, there's a whole series of shows that everyone that did the Arnold can continue on. And then the lower level guys can jump in there and go weekend after weekend.
Yeah, well, they try to. You know, like Tony Doherty has the Australian Arnold the week after Columbus Arnold.
Yep.
And they used to do it where there would be like 10 shows in 10 days in Europe, where one day it'd be Romania, Yugoslavia, you know, Poland, whatever. They would compete when LeBron was winning them all, and that was really well organized. And you know, I just don't know if it's financially worth it anymore. Like to some of these promoters, by the time you pay the fee to put on a show, the prize money, the venue, you're in a hole. You're just doing it for the love of it. And who has, you know, 80 grand to spend and give away, you know? Very few of these shows are making money. They have to put an amateur show along with it, or an expo with it in order to make any money. So, yeah, very few. I'd say the only pro show, aside from the Olympia, that makes money from ticket sales would be the New York Pro. You know, every other show is like, maybe Tampa does, but even Tampa has an amateur show with it, you know? I think they try to schedule it. It's just, man, it's a hard sell. It's a hard way to make money. So I don't know.
We might see a little bit of that this year with every show being moved back, right? Like,
right.
You have to imagine at this point, if shows are allowed to go on, and I guess that's a big if, they're going to be every weekend, both amateur, pro qualifiers, and pro shows. At this point.
Supposedly there's eight weeks in a row with a pro bodybuilding show.
Wow.
Starting with Tampa. So it'll be like Tampa, New York, bam, 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 8 weeks in a row leading up to the Olympia. That makes it pretty exciting.
Of course, yeah. That's when you have those rivalries of, it's possible to lose 1 week to one guy and come back and beat him the next week just by peaking better, right? And one guy starts to slip, and it makes it fun as a fan when you've got the little rivalries going into it.
Right.
You know, one guy saying, you might have beat me last week, but I'm going to nail it this week. You're rooting
and it's very possible.
Yep. And we saw that with Guy last season, right? Where, you know, he even made light of it. He was just off every show.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm coming back for the next one and the next one and the next one, right? I'm going to get it right one of these days. And then finally he, was it Niagara Falls? I think he won, right?
Yeah.
At the end.
The last show of the year.
Yep. All right. Last question here. And we both gotta eat. Favorite gyms in New England, and then we'll open that up to favorite gyms anywhere you've ever been.
Okay. Favorite gym in New England. There's a few that I haven't been to, but clearly I love GBF. That's Greater Boston Fitness in Revere. That's hardcore. They got, you know, heavy dumbbells, heavy atmosphere. You know, people mean business in there. People love to train hard.
A bunch of pros that are training there all the
time. Same thing as what's Tim's gym's name? In
Braintree.
Braintree
Athletic Club, right?
Yeah. No, it was that. That's what.
Bayshore Athletic Club. Yeah.
Club. That's another one. That's same environment. A lot of pros in there. Heavyweight. You know, the owner's a bodybuilder. He, you know, encourages, you know, that's the most important thing to me, is that the owner encourages bodybuilders to be there. You know, if you're like one of those gym owners that can't wear a tank top and, you know, no chalk and stuff like that, come on. The one that I haven't been to that I would love to is the one you went to out west.
Impact.
Impact.
Fitness, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's two others. I haven't been to all of the other gyms. I'm sure there's some other great ones. Impact is awesome.
Yeah.
Very small, might be maybe 10,000 square feet, but it has the best new equipment money can buy. Place is just packed in. You couldn't fit one more machine in there. Great atmosphere, tons of competitors. You look around and it's just everybody's training for some show. You know, just it's a great atmosphere. It's one of the best new gyms I've been to. Other one to mention, I haven't trained there, but I did a photo shoot there, was Compound in Haverhill, over by the Hard Body Meal guys. And great equipment, great equipment. You know, I haven't gone there. Impact, I think I've worked out there 3 or 4 times, so I got a sense of what it was like. Compound just did a photo shoot with Christine there, but incredible equipment, just handpicked. You know, very small facility, but everything you would ever need to train hard.
Now, what's the common denominator here? They're all privately owned. They're not franchises.
Yep.
And that just ought to tell you something. You know, the private-owned gyms are cared for more. The owner is there, you know, interacting with the members, inviting people. I got, you know, messages from all these gym owners at one time or another to come down and welcome me to come train there. And you know, that's the kind of atmosphere I like. I don't want to have to go into a gym and like walk on eggshells going in the gym.
Yeah. Now, how about outside of New England? What gyms stand out to you as the best ones?
Oh my God! Obviously, Oxygen, like crazy. Anything aside from that, and my boy Anth Bales has a new gym is in Durham, which is Northern England. It's well, his was in underneath his where he lived, under his house, and it was unbelievable. And it's the same thing. He partnered up. It's called Ultraflex in Durham, and it looks unbelievable. Haven't been there, but looking forward to getting out there sometime. But yeah, you know, each time I've traveled, again, I end up at like a privately owned facility.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the you know, franchises aren't going to be welcoming me in the meatheads I'm with, you know?
Right.
But yeah, Oxygen is clearly the craziest gym I've ever been to. Obviously been to Gold's Gym Venice, love that. You know, I've been to Metroflex in Texas, Arlington. That is a dungeon, you know? It's either hot or freezing. There's no in between. Yeah, that's it. Definitely Oxygen though.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the experience you have of traveling. I've been to Gold's Venice.
Yeah.
That was great. You know, super packed, right? It's cool for what it is. The photos on the wall, the history, some good equipment. It was just so packed when I went, you know, and with everybody working out with a film crew, you know, with the Instagrammers out there. So, but yeah, and then just outside of New England, obviously Montanari Brothers, Powerhouse.
Oh yeah.
And
leave that out.
Bev's gym.
Yeah.
Those two, there's just you don't see the Instagrammers there. Everybody in there is training hard.
Yeah.
There's just a great environment, you know, the photos of the bodybuilders as well. It's
right.
You know, it's a kind of a lost era. It's how the gyms used to be. So there's something nostalgic, right? We're in such a niche field, and the gyms that we want to work out at are almost extinct at this point. But the ones that survived, the Bevs, Montanari Brothers, you know, now GBF, you know, it's been many gyms in the past, but they just have all this old equipment and the best atmosphere for what we like, right? Certainly wouldn't be, there's a reason that Planet Fitnesses are so successful and LA Fitness is and the chains, right? Because that's what the majority of people want, but it's not what we want. So it's awesome when you still have these niche gyms where it's an individual owner or a small group of owners that take pride in it. right?
Yeah, and you can walk in at any time and you see the ox, Evan Centopani, training legs. That sets the tone immediately. You know, he'll say hi to you and smile, nicest guy on earth, but he's there to work, you know, and that sets the tone. You go to Bev's and you see Juan Morel leg pressing 2,500 pounds or something.
Yeah, I was there. George Peterson was working out.
Yeah, same thing. Forget
Yeah,
about it.
nicest guy.
That flips a switch on you. You know, you're there to work.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of those places. Nobody's going to tell them to rack their weights or make sure you quiet down over there and whatever. So I think we covered it for today. That's about 2 hours. We did good. So listen, people are wondering, Nate, how they can reach you, where they can reach me. Why don't you tell them how we can reach?
Yeah, I'll put it in the in the section below the video. I'll put both of our Instagrams. Obviously, your Instagram is the Boston Mass, but 2 E's on the Boston Mass.
Yeah.
And my Instagram is at Nate Telow, my first name, last name. So you can find us on there. DM us there with any questions you might have. You know, obviously we both are trainers, both do coaching. Someone in the last video commented they wanted Jose to do their prep. So reach out to Jose on his Instagram, DM him, see if he'll work with you. Definitely coaches some great people and does a great job. So that's probably the best place, I would imagine, to get in touch with you, right? Just
yeah,
on Instagram. Yeah, same for me. So subscribe to the channel. We're back, gonna do this regularly. So lots of great content in the Boston Mass channel. Like this video, please leave questions in the comments section so that we can use them for the next one. And we got a special guest coming next week. Do we want to say who? We want to keep it a surprise?
No, we should tell them so they can send questions.
So we got, you tell them, it's your boy.
It's the bad guy. The bad guy, Santi Aragon III. Santi, you guys all know him. Pretty boy with all his hair.
I'm going to have to really get my hair proper in honor of...
I'm going to wear a wig. Yeah, Santi's a hybrid between 212 and classic. He's done well in both. Great guy. Ladies love him. He's a character, and he'll be fun to talk to.
Yeah, super excited. You know, I mentioned to you the other day, I have so much respect for Santi for just being a hustler, right? We talk about, you know, in an era where the money's so limited, and if you're waiting with your hand out for a contract, you're going to be waiting a really long time.
Yeah.
And Santi's really built up a business for himself. You know, besides just having a great physique and being a top competitor, he's really savvy businessman with the products he puts out and how he markets himself. So put your questions in the comments below. I'm going to have a ton of business questions for him next week because I want to get inside of his head, his thought process for this stuff, because he's done very well. So we welcome your questions for Jose and for Santi for next week.
All right.
All right. We'll see everyone next week. Have a good week.
Peace out.